With our non-circulating hydroponic system, we find that a small seedling block is adequate to produce some pretty nice arugula, pak choi, lettuce, and watercress. Forestry tubes filled with growing medium produce these huge cucumber plants and large fruits. Accelerator pots filled with growing medium were adequate to grow these nice tomatoes. But root crops don't always fare so well. For example, ginger rhizomes grow either in the soil or growing medium. In this experiment, ginger growing in a nursery flat filled with growing medium produced 8.7 kilograms of rhizomes per meter of row, but only 3.7 kilograms were produced when there was no growing medium. Similarly, 7.9 kilograms of rhizomes were produced from a 15-liter pot filled with growing medium. Potatoes grew well in an 18.9-liter bag of peat and perlite. An experiment on sub-irrigated potatoes growing in an 18.9-liter bag filled with growing medium yielded 6.1 kilograms per square meter, whereas potatoes growing on an upside-down nursery tray that did not have growing medium yielded only 1 kilogram per square meter. It looks like the best growing method for some crops will involve containers filled with growing medium. And let's face it, many folks simply prefer raising plants in growing medium. Perhaps we can borrow from our hydroponic experiences to improve growing crops in containers of growing medium. This calls for a return visit to our friend Gro Kratky. The secret sauce of his hydroponic method is the moist air space. How could a moist air space be placed in a container of growing medium? A profound question like this requires me to put on my special thinking hat. And even before I put the hat on, the answer is staring me in the face. First, let's remove the enlightenment actuator. And the answer becomes more clear. It's an upside-down pot. Placing an upside-down pot at the bottom of a growing container will create a fairly substantial pocket of moist air in the container. Replacing growing medium with air will save money. For example, if the cost of growing medium is 25 cents per liter, then an upside-down 4-liter pot will save $1 worth of growing medium. One might guess that less growing medium would translate into lower yields, but in fact, this ginger rhizome yield data show that yields actually increased when upside-down pots were placed on the bottoms of growing pots. Encouraged by these results, let's propose some upside-down pot growing methods. Here is a pot in tank method. A float valve maintains a solution level at about 5 centimeters deep. An upside-down pot is placed in a larger pot with drainage holes. Growing medium is moistened by capillary action. To demonstrate this, a concrete mixing tray will be used as the tank. A pot with drainage holes is placed in the tank. An upside-down pot is dropped into the larger pot. A float valve is placed in the tank. This happens to be my homemade yogurt cup float valve, but you can use other kinds of float valves also. A rising water level elevates the purple float blocks and forces the neoprene foam against the nozzle to stop the water flow. You can see water in the bottom of the large pot. The 5 centimeter water depth saturates the lower growing medium and then moistens the upper growing medium by capillary action. The water source can be a plastic trash container or a larger tank. The tank is covered, in this case with an aluminized plastic film. Here's an example of the system using bags instead of pots. This float valve maintains the nutrient solution level in a tank where ginger was grown in a pot in tank method. And it looks like the ginger grew pretty well. This upside down ginger rhizome root mass shows the airspace where the upside-down pot was located. A tank can simply consist of a wooden frame on a level surface which is lined with polyethylene. Here are some happy taro plants which are growing in these tanks. A pot in tank experiment was conducted while I was on sabbatical leave at Penn State University in 2007. A tank was lined with polyethylene film. A float valve maintained a constant liquid level in the tank. Taro was planted. Look at the roots emerging from the pot. A big advantage of pot in tank systems is that roots have extra space to explore. The taro grew pretty well. Dr. Orzlik is holding a taro plant where the pot has been removed. Did we forget to put an upside-down pot for this plant? Peekaboo, I see an opening here. And now I see an upside-down pot in there. The pot got smashed up a little bit, but it did its job and created a nice airspace. Here's the airspace in the root mass of another plant. Look at all the roots that emerged from the pot and grew into the tank. The pot may be really beat up, but it did its job. Here are some potatoes that grew in a pot in tank system. One disadvantage of the pot in tank method is that mosquitoes can breed in the water or nutrient solution in the tank. Switching to another method, a pot with no drainage holes is supplied with a constant 5 centimeter depth of nutrient solution. An upside-down pot is placed in the larger pot. Growing medium is added, and we have a pot method. Here's the system we will try to build. A hole will be drilled for the irrigation microtube, and another hole will be drilled as an overflow hole. Microtubing, which is slightly larger than the hole, is cut at an angle and inserted into the bottom hole. Two slightly undersized holes are drilled in the irrigation tubing. Use a punch to expand the holes a little bit. A hairdryer can be used to warm up the plastic tubing to make it softer and easier to work with if needed. Insert the microtubing from the float valve into the irrigation tubing. Then insert the microtubing from the bucket into the irrigation tubing. The water or nutrient solution will flow from the float valve into the irrigation tubing and then on into the bucket. A water tank is connected to the float valve. Water flows from the tank to the float valve by gravity. Then the water flows into the bucket. Water continues to flow until it reaches a level for which the float valve was set. An upside-down pot is placed in the bucket, and the bucket will be filled with growing medium. This is a pot method. You may want to establish a permanent receptor pot system and a transitory growing pot system. This is a pot growing system. The green growing pot with the upside-down pot would only be placed into the red receptacle pot for a limited time period, such as for growing flowers only when they are in bloom. A float valve maintains a constant water level in the receptor pot. The growing pot is placed into the receptor pot. A tight fit will discourage mosquitoes from getting into the water in the receptor pot. Water easily enters the growing pot through its drainage holes. The upside-down pot is placed into the growing pot. In actual practice, the growing pot with the upside-down pot and the growing medium would all be added in one step. Here is an example where a 3-liter upside-down pot is placed in a 9.5-liter growing pot, which is placed in a 10.3-liter receptacle pot. Ginger is growing with a pot method. The pots are supported by a level board, and all the pots are irrigated by one float valve. This is a standard pot arrangement. But other types of upside-down pots could also be used. Here's a case where your trash can save you cash. Here are some other possible upside-down pots. Here is an upside-down pot arrangement for a Larry Hall watering method used to grow ginger. The upside-down pot here is actually an upside-down nursery tray which was cut to fit the growing pot. Similarly, an upside-down nursery tray was placed in a concrete mixing tray which was filled with growing medium and used to grow eggplant. Thermoform sheet pots served as upside-down pots to grow beans. Two concrete mixing trays can serve as a growing pot and a receptor pot because they nest tightly. Regarding fertilizer application, hydroponic nutrient solution or other soluble fertilizers can be delivered through the float valve. Slow release or other fertilizers can be added to the growing medium, but they should not be applied to the surface. Upside-down pot methods can be used for organic growing. Just apply compost or organic fertilizer to the growing medium and sub-irrigate with water. Well, I hope you folks experiment with these upside-down pot methods, and I would like to leave you with a little riddle. If the plant growing in the pot is cannabis, what would you call this growing method? Please leave your answer in the comments section. Goodbye now.